All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's Dr. Sean, the physical therapy application coach, with another awesome pre-PT success story. Ari, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
I'm great. I'm great. And I'm really excited to be able to chat with you about your journey, about your pre-PT experience and your success. I'm sure it feels like a long time coming, and it must be kind of weird to kind of sit back and think this is actually happening now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about you and what's led you to this point in your journey.
Okay. Well, I graduated from Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, with my undergraduate in exercise and sports science, and I graduated there in fall 2019. So, like, obviously, that point after I graduated, I was planning on taking a little bit of a break after graduating before, going into the whole graduate process. But obviously, we had the pandemic and everything that happened. So, kind of put a bit of a shift in my plans, especially me being a planner kind of person. But in terms of physical therapy, what got me interested in the physical therapy profession, in a sense, was my mom, when I was younger, a few years back in high school, suffered a brain tumor. And because of that, I was introduced to the physical therapy field because we had a physical therapist actually come to our home and work with her day in and day out. And I was able to kind of just pick her brain and ask questions because it really interested me, the hands-on approach that physical therapists had in comparison to other medical professions, which I'd been interested in at the time.
Sure.
So kind of with that, and then from that point, I was able to get in contact with the hospital and kind of just observe different settings. And just kind of from there, that interest, grew, and I really grew a passion for physical therapy. So during my time at Texas State, I was able to get involved in a lot of observation opportunities and research and things and experiences that kind of just solidified that for me.
For sure. For sure. No, that's fantastic. I think that is what it is for a lot of applicants, in the sense that you have some kind of big aha moment, but then that gets that's like the spark, right? And then you're slowly pouring more wood on the fire to get it burning. So you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I think it's great to hear that, because I was the same way, right? Like, I got introduced to physical therapy when I was younger. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then it wasn't until I did like serious observation that I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do on a daily basis. So, and I think a lot of applicants are that way. Some people have these crazy stories where it was like all at once it happened. And sometimes people will sit there and question and be like, well, I didn't have one of those. Does that mean I'm really supposed to do this? Right. And I think both of us can say, yes, if you're kind of a slow burner, if you want to call it that way, right? Like, it takes some time before you really decide on it. That's okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some of the fun stuff. So you, actually, I want to go back. So talk to me about how COVID altered your application.
Okay, how COVID? So, well, I guess for me, I had plans to where I was going to work, at a PT clinic or somewhere like that, and save up money to pay for my applications and all that. But obviously with COVID, it just kind of shut everything down. So in terms of observations, like, I couldn't go into any clinics in person per se to observe in that sense. So I kind of had to switch around my plans. I ended up moving back home with my parents, which was something that, is a big adjustment you kind of have to make in terms of finding that balance.
Right.
With making time for the things that I wanted to do, and then also being able to be there for my family.
Sure.
So in terms of that, with COVID, I ended up working a job where I worked with kids with special needs, kind of in a home setting. So I was able to kind of travel to their homes and work with them in that kind of capacity, and doing that while also here. And then I was able to kind of have more time to focus on classes than I thought I would, in terms of retaking classes that I just felt like I wanted to take to make my application that much stronger.
Right. So COVID derailed your plans, but it also gave you opportunities for different things.
Definitely. I feel like it gave me a lot more time to kind of slow my roll a bit, in a sense, and kind of just focus on things in a more honed in capacities when it came to my application, especially with taking the GRE, with on focusing on just those essays for those applications, and kind of getting an order for actually looking at the different areas of observation that I had actually observed at, and kind of honing in on those experiences and kind of just looking at how those had kind of impacted me as an applicant.
Sure, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Maybe you could make an argument that in some ways, COVID helped you slow down so you could be in a position where you actually could really focus and like you said, hone in on those specific areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great way to look at it. Like there's a lot of applicants that have been frustrated because things haven't gone their way. And at this, like, what can you do, right? Like, what can you do? So I love that you didn't just throw your hands up and say like, oh, I'm just not going to apply, right? Like there's been people who have done that, and I'm not saying that's wrong. If that was their decision, then that's their decision. But I've really admired applicants like you who are like, hey, you know what? I'm still going to go for this. I still have my goals. And then you go and you make it happen, right? You make adjustments and you make it happen.
Right.
So congratulations and good job for enduring through that. I don't know if I think I might need to do a little celebration for all the applicants. Like, hey, if you got through and applied and got in, like this will be an application cycle that no one will ever forget, right?
Oh,
it's a memorable time in your life.
Once in a lifetime, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully, never again.
Never.
Please let me be dead if COVID comes back to the full extent that it did, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about more of the fun stuff, right? So we'll leave COVID behind. Let's talk about, so we went through the application process. Then when you submitted your applications, give me the timeline for when things happened and where are we at now?
Okay. So around the time I sent in my application, specifically for Harding, I think I heard back from them pretty quickly, like I think within a month or less, with them offering me interview opportunity. And so obviously with that, I reached out to you obviously to get that interview prep, which I think really helped me in a sense of putting my mind in that kind of mindset of, talking to someone about myself, because I think that's something that not only me, but a lot of other pre-PTs struggle with, having to kind of gas yourself up, kind of just, promote yourself in a sense, this is why I should be able to attend this school and become a physical therapist, and like why this school can help me in that sense.
Sure.
So I think that was really impactful. And when I did that interview prep with you, I did the interview, and then I think a few months after that, something that was really important for me was keeping in contact with those programs that I either interviewed with or hadn't heard anything from, which I think is something that a lot of PPT should really in a sense do, which I think helped me a lot, because when I heard back from the head of the program, I think at Harding, he was the one who contacted me when I reached out and let him know, that I had an interview and I wanted to thank the program for, considering me. He reached out to me and kind of, thanked me for that, for reaching out and let me know kind of where I stood in terms of getting accepted into the program, which kind of came for me. It was like that. He let me know, you're actually at the top of the waiting list. If one more person drops or you don't, it'll be you'll be getting in. And so I was kind of like, oh, it's all happening right now. So yeah, because for me, I was just kind of chilling in a sense, because after I took the interview, I reached out to the program and they let me know, that I was on the waiting list and also where I stood. And then I also asked, my odds, considering where I stood on the waiting list, or my chances of getting in. And so she let me know, obviously, that they were good odds. So I think it's important, especially when you're on the waiting list or just in any sense, when you're interested in a program, to kind of just keep that contact and personal connection with the people and the faculty at that program, because I think it made a big difference with the people I spoke to at the program, at least.
For sure, because it definitely shows that you still were engaged in finding out if you were still excited to go to that program, and we're hoping that they would be just as excited about you. So something that people ask me often, and I want to get better at this, being able to provide more practical or sensible advice with this. So I think you could speak to this point. how do you balance reaching out and not being pesky or desperate when you're on a waiting
Mm,
list?
okay, that's a good question. I think what's important for me was kind of keeping a timeline within when I'd contacted a program and when they had contacted me. And in regards to the ways that I asked questions directly, like because for me, I think when I after I interviewed from Harding, I think I gave myself, I said, chill out. Not I think I contacted the person that I interviewed with, like I think literally maybe an hour or so, like a few hours after I interviewed with him, just thanking him, for speaking with me, kind of in that personal level, and just because he's one of the faculty members that I'll probably be taking a class from
Nice.
within the program. So I just reached out to him, thanking him for that opportunity, and then I gave myself, I think, a few weeks after the interview before I reached out. I kind of just took myself, to kind of just chill out, take a breath, and focus on other things, which I know can be hard because especially being an applicant with, you're waiting, because the application process in itself, you apply, you send it in, and then you're waiting. You interview, and then you're waiting. So it's a long waiting game, but I think you kind of have to play that game in a sense of pacing yourself and knowing, when enough is enough, when to ask certain questions and when to hold back. And if you are contacting faculty and stuff in that sense, it would be more inclined to talk about more personal things, kind of asking, in a sense, like the faculty member that I spoke with, I talked to him about, I think, research or something that I'd done. And I knew that he was interested in research because he did research himself. So talking more conversational wise sooner rather than later, rather than reaching out asking, like, how's my application going? Where are we at? How's it going? Every few weeks, I definitely don't recommend that. I would say maybe the best timeline is, once a month.
Sure.
It's something I would recommend to, applicants who are looking to apply. Kind of just waiting, and also just waiting to see what you get back. Because if you're emailing and you're not hearing back, those emails, they might be seeing those emails, but they might just be sitting there in that inbox, or they could be getting emails from other applicants just as much. So I think a lot of programs really appreciate having a timeline for, that grace of waiting a little bit, a few weeks, a month here and there. They really appreciate that checking because it shows, that you're being consistent and focusing on that goal.
No, I think that is fantastic advice. Honestly, I think that monthly follow-up is good. It shows that you're still invested in the program, because sometimes that might be the deciding factor. If there's you and another applicant and you've had more consistent contact and everything else is equal, then you seem more interested than the other person, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's really good advice, and I'm definitely going to say, like, if you're on a wait list, proactive things you can do is
Mm-hmm.
like planning out your schedule that is like at most monthly to follow
Mm-hmm.
up and just say, like,
Yes.
you know what, I'm going to do everything I can. Here's my plan for this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then on top of that, I really liked how you were talking about being personable about your conversation too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that can be hard, and I think you have the best people that you have to make those conversations with are the people you interview with, right? Because
Yes. Mm-hmm.
you have that relationship, and I think you took advantage of, there was an open door to continue communication afterwards. So making sure you open every possible channel with different individuals to, be more of a human being instead of just an angsty applicant who's wanting to, of course they know everyone wants to get in, right? But being patient, being respectful, the wait list process, it's called a wait list for a reason, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's awful. It's painful to sit there and to just every day be like, check in your inbox over and over and over and over again. But just giving yourself that time to say, I've done everything I can. I have a schedule. I'm reaching out to people to try to maintain contact, and you can be at peace that you've done everything you can to be efficient at that point. So thank you. That's really good. I think that's good, practical, someone who's gone through that whole thing. Instead of, I was on a waiting list and got in, and I was not nearly as diligent as you. So I have no idea why that happened, but I think you're a perfect example of how to be proactive while being on a waiting list and having that payoff. And great job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so Ari, let's talk now about, we've been together for a while, right? So we started like doing coaching just to get your application kind of set up and organized. And then we moved into your essays. And as you mentioned before, then we finished up with interviews. So we kind of went through like the whole life cycle of at least the coaching products that I use right now. How do you feel like using these services made a difference in your application?
I think it really gave me a sense of reflection in terms of seeing the kind of applicant kind of that I was, especially in terms of with essays and things like that, you know, especially knowing that you might think that you're a good writer, you know, but in terms of when it comes to grad schools, looking at your essays and looking at how you present yourself, you know, there's a different kind of structure and things when it comes to applying, you know, yourself to an essay and getting yourself across in words in an essay. So I think having your help, especially when it came to kind of organizing all the different things that I have in my application over the years in terms of my GPA and my different experiences, and being able to kind of just mesh those all together and to paint a picture of who I was as an applicant really helped me be successful kind of in this process. Especially, I think one big thing that for me that I think made the difference was the essays. Because for me, even being a writer, I think having that structure and having someone give me that feedback and seeing it kind of through their eyes and how someone else might see my words was really helpful for me.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think you you come across, you're very well spoken, you present yourself well, and it's obvious you can tell from school that translated over into your writing content as well, your written communication. And the fact of the matter is, most schools just don't teach you how to write this way. You know, it's a different type of persuasive writing that I almost feel like it's more like salesmanship and marketing, right? And people have a hard time with that because they feel like they're bragging about themselves. And I think I know we had that conversation where I was like, Ari, like, you gotta cowboy up with this stuff, you know, or cowgirl up with this stuff, because if you don't believe it, then they're not gonna believe it. And I think once we kind of shifted your mindset of I'm bragging about myself to I'm telling people why I deserve an opportunity to pursue my dreams, right? And that's what it comes down to, is if you believe it, they will believe it. And sometimes it's having that clarity of thought and that organization of ideas is all you need, because you have the knack, you have the work ethic, and you can write well. It's just channeling all of those attributes in the right direction, and it paid off. It worked. And I love so many of your essays had such good content that was like, it had emotional meaning to it. It had depth. It had significance. It showed why you were a capable person. And you know, like, it's one thing to hear me say, this is how you do it. Right. But actually putting that into practice is tough. It can be tough. And I think I had another testimonial interview with a gentleman who told me that he actually used these principles in PT school to write papers and stuff. And I was like, okay, because it's different. Like, PT school is a little bit more sterile writing. It's more your academic writing, right? But he said, like, no, like there was definitely opportunities to use it. And I hope these are skills that you guys carry with you forever. As you go and you interview for jobs and you're moving up the ladder for promotions. So that way you can always know, like, this is why I deserve this opportunity, and being able to own that.
Definitely.
Okay, so Ari, what recommendations do you have for pre-PTs who are coming up, either this next cycle or future cycles? What would be like your number one piece of advice if you were going to give any tidbits to them?
I think my advice would be to find experiences that when you're going into looking into observation hours and just different experiences you plan to do with an applicant, finding things that really speak to you kind of as a person and speak to your values as a person. I think that's something that's really important, because for me, when I even interviewed with some programs, a lot of them, some of the different varied experiences that I had, they showed a lot of interest in things that were, I mean, maybe out of the ordinary, but were things that to me were something that I was genuinely interested in. So I think finding those experiences that are more unique to you, and not necessarily just focusing on, how many, like, so many hours you can get, or, this certain experiences, just because other applicants that are getting those experiences might not mean that those are the experiences for you, that will help you as an applicant and as a future physical therapist. I think that was something that was really important for me, because in a sense, when I interviewed with the faculty member at Harding and I spoke to him about a lot of my experiences, he really only honed in on he would ask me specific questions about certain experiences. And he said, so tell me about this. Let me know more about this. What was this about? What did you gain from this? How did this help you, in a sense? And kind of just seeing how those experiences, what I actually gained from those experiences, not me just going into an experience just because I needed observation hours, because I needed some kind of experience, but if I actually took something from that experience and carried it with me, in a sense, because I think especially when you're going into a physical therapy program, you're gonna come out of that physical therapy school, obviously with values and things that you've learned that you'll need to take on with you as a physical therapist and carry those things kind of with you. So I think that was something that was really important for me.
That's great. And honestly, that is a piece of advice that I don't think I've gotten with these testimonials yet. I think it's, but very, very pertinent and very wise, that you need to find things that interest you, and that will, because if you're just going through the motions, it's not going to mean anything to you or the people looking at your application, because they'll see like, oh, like just another cookie cutter applicant going through the motions. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate that perspective. I think that's something that we all could do better of. Instead of having everyone fall in and be uniform, find ways to be different by figuring out how you're different and pursuing the things that you like. Don't be different just for being different's sake, but actually do something that will develop you and your character and your knowledge and all those type of things. So thank you. That's great. Well, Ari, it's been awesome. I really enjoyed this testimonial and interview. I think you've hit on some really great points that I think so many applicants will relate with. And I wanted to just remind you, on your Teachable account with when you signed up, you've got all these awesome resources to help you as you go into PT school. And especially that pre-PT to SPT survival guide, where you're kind of making that jump. I definitely would look over that PDF and start looking at some of those just pieces of advice to kind of help you get structured. It's a big time in your life, and as much as you can get like into a habit and get down pat, you're going to be that much more successful as a student. And like you said, you'll get more from school, so you can go out and do something with it when you graduate. So don't forget those things. And you're a part of the Physical Therapy Application Coach family for life. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out, and you're a part of the family. So thank you. And thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you, Sean.